Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the most outrageous reason someone filed for divorce? Was a loud chewer at the dinner table. He developed a complex and literally needed out as he couldn't bear to eat with her. I worked for a law office where the owner would talk about the man who sued for divorce because his wife would no longer allow him to use a loaded gun as a marital aid. She had apparently agreed to it at some point, and was fine with the gun as long as it was empty, but that just wasn't good enough for him. Edit for clarity, since some folks need it spelled out. By marital aid, I mean a dildo. Taught the parakeet certain cuss words for his wife. Ha ha ha. The parrot lives with the man now. My client was the outrageous one, so my heart went out to his poor wife. He had OCD which manifested primarily financially, so he made their lives a penny-pinching hell. For example, he was obsessed with avoiding unnecessary driving, wear and tear on the car, gas expenses, so he cut the whole family's hair at home and never let them eat at a restaurant or go to the movies. Weirdest of all was that he kept one toilet paper roll on him at all times and you had to get one square from him before you could go to the bathroom. He never gave more than one square. Wife finally got fed up and left him when 1. He gave her bangs during an in-home haircut. 2. Their daughter was so traumatized by the toilet paper thing they couldn't potty train her. My dad was a divorce lawyer. He had a client who wanted to divorce her husband for 2 reasons. 1. He did not have enough hair on his chest. 2. He did not drive fast enough. Keep in mind this was in the 70s when chest hair was a bit more important. Wasn't the reason but did happen during the course of the divorce. Neither side would follow the court orders. When they had to go back to court they were fighting over a pistol and the man's grandmother's bowls. I assumed for weeks that these bowls were some sort of heirloom or expensive china. When they finally brought the bowls in to swap they were fucking Tupperware. Colleague handled a case where money was not an issue but the kids were. Neither parent wanted them. She was kidnapped in Mexico and he refused to pay ransom. Eventually her family managed to pay and she was left on the side of the road. It is not outrageous as in petty but outrageous as how absurd that is. I had some friends get divorced. It was because she legit hated Dale Earnhardt and he legit hated Jeff Gordon. NASCAR fans from 1995 to 2005 would not consider this a petty issue. Paralegal here. Still remember an early case I worked on. Man divorced his wife for her bingo addiction. 10 to 12 times per week she went to bingo. She was 82, he was 86. But the all-time greatest. 2 20-somethings, they were irreconcilable because he kept smoking her weed stash when she wasn't home. The dog he bought me pissed on the carpet. I was a legal assistant when this case came in. This lady divorced her husband of 2 months because he got her an iPad case for her birthday, instead of the expensive jewelry she wanted. He had an argument with the new in-laws during the wedding. Moved out at around 5 a.m. during the first night. Not a divorce lawyer but used to practice criminal defense work. Once had a heavily pregnant client that attacked her husband, of less than a year, with an iron. Said client was now sitting in a police cell, sobbing and insisting that her husband deserved it and she wanted a divorce. I asked what he had supposedly done, assuming he'd cheated or something similar. Turns out she'd checked his phone and found a single nudie site in his browsing history, from over 2 years beforehand. Not the most pleasant thing to discover, but hardly worth battering him half to death and demanding a divorce. He was frustrated by her hoarding. She was frustrated by his utter uselessness. He filed for divorce, and she was my client. Her prized possession was a room or 2 full of scrapbooking materials. His prized possession was a yard full of junk cars that he never worked on. They had no children and no real assets. They hated each other more than any 2 people I'd ever met, and the only terms they would agree to were these: he gets the scrapbooking stuff, and she gets the cars. My client also took the house, as he had no income and didn't want it anyway. It was the shortest divorce decree I ever drafted. I intentionally squeezed it onto 1 page, and the judge and I had a good laugh over it. He got drunk at the wedding, she did not like it, and decided to divorce him right after the honeymoon, which she went to without him. Moreover, this was all an elaborate scheme of divorce robbery, because the guy was loaded, and so was his entire family. They were loaded because they were a family of excellent lawyers, and he was a 3rd-generation lawyer, with all the smarts and experience of his predecessors combined. Let's just say it did not go well for her. I didn't like her anymore, 2 days after being married. Failed exorcisms. Client had an inner ear condition that caused chronic vertigo, but symptoms could be treated with medication. Husband was an evangelical who was convinced his wife 1. Had become possessed and that her vertigo and general crankiness with his methods were evidence of demonic possession. 2. The medications she was taking was enabling the devil to hide inside her. 3. The only proper recourse was exorcism. He would hide her meds until she got dizzy and then try various methods of exorcism. These methods included sweating it out with the heater under the blankets, freezing it out with the AC and fans, and trying to scare it out with a boo. Staff attorney for a judge. Not a divorce but a custody modification hearing. Ex-wife wanted sole LNP custody of the kids because the ex-husband was spending all his money on a palm reader/psychic and refused to pay child support. On cross, ex-wife's attorney got him to admit that he was spending all his discretionary income on this psychic. He said he had spent over $5,000 on readings and other services there. Judges frequently chime in with questions in domestic matters, so my judge asked why he was not paying support as his divorce decree required. His explanation was 1. The psychic could read that his children were provided for without his money. And 2. He would be able to repay the ex when he takes the children to Mexico permanently to seek great riches there. Which my judge read as, "My psychic told me to kidnap my kids." Not me, but a friend. My mom has divorced her husband because his mother still coddled him at age 40, with his consent. They lived with his mother, common in Asia. By coddle I mean that she would walk straight into their room after his shower and powder his back for him. They couldn't lock their bedroom door because his mother would come in as and when she wanted. If they locked the door, she would knock repeatedly asking what they were doing. LOL, what would they be possibly doing? Playing poker? I knew a guy from a high school job who divorced his wife of 2 months because she would sleep with a nightlight but he could only sleep in total darkness, as they apparently never lived together until after getting married. He hated her nightlight so much that he would often sleep on the couch instead, but sometimes he would claim the bed for himself and lock her out of the bedroom for the night. This was an eccentric late 40s man working at a Burger King who acted like all the other high school co-workers were his best chums, and often told us these weird stories. I'm glad I don't work with him anymore. Friend of mine divorced his then wife because she would only speak French when her family would come over. She was Spanish, as was her family. I worked as a paralegal for a divorce lawyer. Case analysis was one of my main responsibilities. I shit you not. A recently married couple, of 2 years, broke it off because the husband would not stop feeding the dog. The dog got outrageously fat. Apparently she saw connection between the dog and future children. I got into scams because of a lawyer in my old office represented a woman whose husband left her because she got involved in a romance scam that started as a pen pal. It was a weird marriage. He was clearly a closet gay who married her for her money because she was ugly as all hell. They kept separate lives for 30 years. She began corresponding with someone she believed was a 3-star general serving in Afghanistan who needed cash to move to the United States. She eventually would transfer him about $70,000 over the course of 8 months. Even when my friend brought me into the conference room to lay out the case as being a scam, for which I had piles of proof for, she continued to transfer money, including a $8,000 transfer the day after. The judge ruled she owed her husband dollar for dollar what she gave the scammer, so $70,000 plus he issued a temporary restraining order barring her from transferring marital assets. I heard of a woman that had her marriage annulled because the groom insisted to bring his mother on their honeymoon. Then, on the honeymoon, the bride discovered the reason he wanted to bring his mother was to breastfeed him. Yes, the groom, a grown man, was still breastfeeding. Divorce lawyer here. One client filed for divorce because he owed his bookie $70,000. He didn't want to leave his wife, but he figured he would get half the house in the divorce, which was worth $700,000, and pay his debts. He had already blew through their life savings gambling. He was the worst guy. I met a divorce lawyer in India, and you know what's unique for a divorce lawyer in India? Divorce. The profession didn't really exist until about 15 years ago, and even now it's very difficult convincing people that they really do need a divorce because it's so shameful in the culture. I had a client file for divorce because every morning his wife would ask him how he takes his coffee, for 7 years. My 90-year-old client, the husband, and his son retained me to initiate divorce proceedings with his 88-year-old wife. They'd been married 60 years. The wife had recently taken to beating him with his own cane, because their daughter poisoned her into thinking he was hiding money from them. The battle came down to husband and son versus wife and daughter. At their first court appearance, my client showed up in an old 1950s-style pinstripe suit and fedora. He was a farmer his whole life, and this was clearly the only suit he owned. He was such a meek and lovely old gentleman. I had to pass my client on to a new lawyer midway through the proceedings because I accepted a job in a different country, but I understand the divorce was eventually granted. Man, I was going to say that our client was served divorce papers for sending a couple $100,000 overseas in a scam, but damn, you guys got better ones than me. Edit, it wasn't a couple 100,000, but over $500,000 AUD emailing to a Baltic woman, back and forth over a period of time over which he sent the dollars totaling to the $500K plus. No video calling or anything, just emails. Not that outrageous, but our client's wife, soon to be ex, of 20 years left him for her gym instructor, whom he introduced, who's also a woman. NAL, but the story of the couple in Algeria always gets me. Groom sees his new wife the morning after the wedding without makeup, takes her for an intruder, and proceeds to sue for over $10,000 for psychological trauma. Not a divorce lawyer, but I had a friend whose parents divorced for irreconcilable differences over time spent playing EverQuest. NAL, but my old neighbor divorced his wife because she no longer wanted to dye her hair blonde. Probs more reasons, but that was his final straw. Knew a couple a little over a decade ago who I was close friends with. The wife wanted children, and after several months of trying plus a doctor visit later, he was found to be infertile/unable to have children due to his sperm. She filed for divorce several weeks later. Then one random hookup later she got pregnant from a one-night stand while the proceedings were still going. He used that in the court battle, which assisted with him taking the majority of their possessions post-split due to her actions. Paralegal. A couple got divorced over a cat. Wife called cat Snowball because of white fur and only wanted the cat to eat wet food or chicken breast. Husband called cat Lily again because of white fur and believed it should only eat dry food. These two argued for a year over custody of the cat but did not give a shit about their human kids aged 15 months, 4 years, and 6 years old. Kind of in the same category, I've had a lot of younger male potential clients come in for divorce consults with their mother. Then, during the consult, the mother does 98% of the talking, and it's clear who actually wants the divorce. I'll usually escort mom to wait in the lobby while I talk to the son directly, and most of the time he's just there to appease his mother. On a related note, I once had just the mother call for a consult because she said explicitly she wanted her son to get a divorce. I politely informed her that's not how divorces worked. I do my student practice at my family's law firm. Young woman filed for a divorce because her husband drank 1 beer during weekdays after a day of work. The guy wasn't violent, doing drugs, or anything like that. He was just a normal, polite guy who liked to have a cold one after 10 HR shift. They are very good couple and argue so rarely that this woman's friends told her to write down everything he did to upset her and reread it every day, so she had reasons to be angry about. My mom, lawyer, set the woman straight, told her he just doing what all guys do and to find herself new friends instead of ones ready to sabotage their marriage. I know a couple, both lawyers. Got separated because the husband can't stand the wife's loud and energetic personality. My aunt had a case where the wife had glued all of the outdoor hoses together so he wouldn't spend more time washing his vehicle anymore. When the glue didn't work, she just cut them all up. When he bought new ones, he filed for divorce. I was interning at the time, but my favorite was a couple filed because they both came out as homosexual. Filed for irreconcilable differences. Seemed amicable though,